Come on. What are you
It's
doing?
been
Hey, hello.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm beautiful. And how beautiful are you?
Wait a minute for the Timotei moment.
Oi.
Like candy floss.
Now, I have to tell you something. Most people log into Facebook and they'll see Facebook's got a memory for you, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And by and large, we all open it up and we look at it and we go, what a ridiculous haircut. I'm never doing that again. Simon Whale logged in to Facebook. He didn't tell me this, but a couple of days ago, he sees a picture of him being peroxide blonde in Tokyo in 2018. And he instantly that is ego for you. That is ego.
And that shows how I have been planning this for some time now. And actually, I did think about I didn't think this was ready to be unveiled at the Conveyancing Awards on Tuesday. I thought that just might blow their minds too much. But yeah, I know I always get an itch, which isn't why I'm on the penicillin. But I always get an itch every now and again just to go back to, as you said, my roots. Or as somebody put it on that comments there, you look like Donald Trump. So thank you for that comparison.
You do. You look like if Boris Johnson and Donald Trump had a baby, a lying baby, it'd be you.
Yeah, they probably would.
Mr. Whale, tell me about your week. How's it been?
What a week, Mincy. What a week. So obviously admin day on a Monday, as you know. Let's get the week off to the right thing. But from then, it just snowballed and snowballed. So I had the Conveyancing Awards on Tuesday. That was absolutely lovely and wonderful. Invited by the lovely Zanara of Simply Conveyancing. And she got highly commended personally. So that was lovely to be able to see there. And it's weird, the Conveyancing Awards, because it's a bit like going to Bizarro World. The structure's all the same, but you don't know all the same people. And believe me, if you've ever sat through 3 to 4 hours of an awards ceremony where you know everybody and you think it still takes too long, try doing that when you don't know a single company, or at least only 1 or 2 of them. It challenged even me, David. But luckily, I held up the prop tech end of the bargain and delivered on the dance floor. I think it's fair to say in spades.
Wow. See, we've all been saying that the conveyancing industry needed a shake-up. Yeah. They didn't know, though, that they needed to see you on the dance floor.
And honestly, am I hilarious? Do you still use a fax to all 700 of them individually? It went down better than I could have imagined.
And all 698 of them responded, yes, of course. Doesn't everybody? Yeah.
We're in an award for it tonight. Best use of a fax.
Sponsored by Brother.
Yeah.
That was a niche fax joke there.
Yeah, that was really good. So Wednesday, then I had a few meetings and a round table with a company called Tapter. You're going to be seeing a lot more about them. They're a communications platform, and they do almost like a private version of WhatsApp and everything else. So we had a roundtable discussion with some of the great and the good around digitization. I'm writing that up at the moment. I'm competing with you to get our ebooks out on that basis. And then Thursday, I went to the Agent X conference by the Life Cycle and Iceberg crew, and that was really, really good. Actually, I think I'm really getting a taste for these smaller conferences, where it can be a little bit more kind of intimate, a little bit more. So I think there was about 250, 300 people there, but it felt very sort of TED talky and everything around it. So that was really, really good.
Fantastic. And why don't you expand on this comment slightly? Have you seen anything good at the theatre recently?
Have I seen anything good? We're gonna have to find out who that. Oh,
that's somebody that knows something about you.
Yes, it is. So
do you wish to respond to that?
Yeah, it'll be Graham Wilson and Graham Wilson. It wasn't even Graham Wilson's invite. I was invited to Hamilton by the amazing Louise Moss, to which I would normally be grateful. I just wish she had told me that it was going to be 673 hours long. Never have I wanted a lead character to die quite so much. And after the initial betrayal that there wasn't even any Formula One racing involved in it.
That's the musical they're all waiting for.
That's all they needed to do, and that's stolen straight from Alan Partridge.
I love that. I love that.
When's he going to segue to the racing?
I hear you're keeping a guest hidden backstage. Maybe you'd like to build up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think let's get him on. And you know what, David? This is the best thing about it. He hasn't cost the £10,000 that Tory MPs cost. He's here for only £8,000. Mr. Matt Baldock, bring him on. Never mind the Baldocks.
Hey!
Hello there.
Welcome.
Morning, David. Morning, Abel Xavier. How are you?
Thank you for waiving your normal fee of £10,000 a day just to talk to us. That is phenomenal, though, isn't it? It's phenomenal how stupid they are. Like they get themselves caught.
Yeah, how absolutely. What's interesting, have you seen them all railing at it was a sting. It was a sting. None of them are actually defending the actual, that they would quite have. Not one of them did any research. Like, as far as I know, there was no history to this company whatsoever, proper website. So they're just so greedy. They can't even be asked to do the slight. When I'm taking bribes, I always do my research.
The best was I think she interviews Kwasi Kwarteng and she goes, so what's your rate? And he goes, 10,000 a month. And she goes, oh right, we were thinking more like 10,000 a day. And he very, very quickly it winds it back in and he goes, yeah. Well, we're not that far apart, are we? Yeah.
And now you see how the magic of the mini budget happened. He's the only chancellor that didn't use Excel. He used an Etch-a-Sketch.
It smacked a little bit of like when you've got a 1% agent in a very old lady's room and he thinks he can get away with a 3% fee. And they were like, what's your fee? 3%?
We were thinking of giving you 5%.
Yeah.
But enough about Friday, Matt?
Yeah. So record figures.
The reason I've invited Matt Baldock on here today is because whereas you've just been sort of living it up at the conveyancing awards and stuff, this man lives and breathes conveyancing. He's done more for conveyancing this week than anyone's done in 50 years. There are conveyancers out there that have pictures of Matt Baldock on their wall and say, look, that is the second coming.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Matt, tell us all about your work this week because you have been very heavily involved with conveyancing week.
Yeah, I mean it's very kind of you to say, David, but I don't want to kind of over egg my part there. But no, so
take him off there.
He's gone. He's gone.
I think
worst $8 grand we've spent, David.
Imagine if you'd have paid me 10. So yeah, National Conveyancing Week. As I said to a client, I said I was speaking at National Conveyancing Week, and he said, "Well, that must be a joke in itself, mustn't it? It should be National Conveyancing 6 months." And I kind of said, "Well, yeah, along those lines." But there's obviously a big kind of issue, and fair play to Rob Housestone putting it on. They're trying to kind of highlight, and they invited me to kind of represent a state agency, I suppose, in a collaboration between agents and conveyancers. And again, fair play to them for letting agents in, because what I do find is that a lot of industries are very good at saying we need change or we need collaboration, but they're not actually inviting anybody to collaborate with. So
I couldn't agree with that. I mean, I've been hearing there's this monthly get-together where people go for dinner and the estate agents say no suppliers. And I always think that's so crazy, isn't it? Because you do want to collaborate, don't you? Like you just said.
You do want to collaborate. But do you remember that bit that you said at the start about a 4-hour awards do and being bored out of your mind? And then you've got to go and be sold to for the next 3 hours.
Fair play. Yeah.
So Matt, let me ask you though, how far apart are we then? in terms of where we think the problem is on our side of the bridge, if you like, and where the conveyancers think the problem is? Are we that far apart, or are we more or less on the same page?
I think we're more or less on the same page. I think ultimately the conveyancing system's broken, and there are very few conveyancers that don't agree with that. It's not like they're all sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic. I love having to do all this work." Because a lot of them are on fixed fees. They're not on massive fees. Agents and conveyancers have got a lot in common. We're both probably seen in the lower rung. Agents in the professional world we're looked down on, and in the legal world, without being disrespectful, nobody goes to university and says, "I want to be a conveyancer." So we've both got that kind of in common, and our fees are being driven down. But so conveyancers want change. I think agents want change, but as with most things, if we snipe at each other, it's not going to get there. The good news is, and you'll know as well as me with all the work you do at Kerfuffle, there are lots of options out there, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that can fix it. But it's that bit. It's a bit like running a sale. All the kind of the hard work's done, and then it's the inquiries that hold everything up. It's the same with this. It seems I know of a few solutions that I think can speed everything up, but it's getting everybody on board. It's getting agents to agree to it. It's getting conveyancers to agree to it.
And is technology the biggest part of that conversation in terms of taking that whole sort of stacks of paper that conveyancers have on their desks, these massive files? I don't know if you've ever been into a solicitor's office when they're mid throws of conveyancing, but there's paper everywhere and it's ridiculous. Is there a concerted effort to move away from that? Because I know the Land Reg were talking about digitizing pretty much all of their process.
Yeah, and I was at something last year at the Law Society where they were there, but I think that's going to take longer than they wanted. I think, again, everybody understands technology has to move it forward. I mean, I started this job 22 years ago, I think. And if you think about the way we watch TV, the way we're communicating now, the medical profession, technology has taken everything on, apart from the home moving process. Even the way we market properties, that's all changed. But, and again, the thing will be, there's a problem there. So it's been identified, but now we have so many. I probably reckon I get at least an email a week from a company telling me they've invented the idea to do all the upfront legal work at the start. And I'm like, I'm really sorry about this, but you haven't invented it. And then they get a bit annoyed with me and go, "No, you don't understand." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have faith."
This is different. This one's different.
The game changer that we're all promised. So I don't know how we do it, but it's almost like we need to all pick one solution and kind of run with that. And you can have different companies, I suppose, coming into that. But you need to kind of have a system, if you like, to go there. But the tech's already there.
Have you been speaking to like Glynis and the Upfront Information Group, I think they're called, obviously, who are trying to get everybody together in terms of, just like you're highlighting there, there's no point people doing it by bits and bats, is there? And I've been invited in a couple of them, and they do seem to have a real vision for what can be achieved and bringing together the different parties. But that's quite an interesting initiative. It's well worth people following on LinkedIn if you can do, just to see what's happening.
I imagine it is, but no, I don't get invited to anything important like that, Simon. They say these big movers and shakers round tables I hear about have the suppliers there, but not the agents. So it's difficult. I watch with interest as all these people that aren't estate agents discuss how they're going to improve estate agency.
Let me tell you how we're going to do it.
Every time it's like, if I was an estate agent or when I was an estate agent, off. But yeah, no, I'm sure they do great. But I'm not sure what companies you're allowed to kind of mention, but my belief is that the tech's always there. I think everybody needs to go and look at. I mean, for a start, you've got Brian Mansell at Gazelle. So Brian's really passionate about it. Yeah. Personally, I think that tech's moved on a bit. I think even from that, so you've got CodeJute, and I think CodeJute, because the biggest problem I can work out with change is getting information. It's people return. Solicitors moan that agents are phoning them for updates. They said, if you stop phoning me, I could do the work. And agents say, well, if you gave me the update, I wouldn't have to phone you. So CodeJute seems to have a system where everybody plugs in and everybody puts their notes on, so you can see everything in real time.
Isn't that the critical point? CodeJute, funny enough, have come up a number of times this week, and I'm a big fan of what Steve and the team's doing there. And there is the kind of what comes first element to it, isn't there? Because clearly when there is that critical mass, when you've got a tipping point of the different parties getting involved, it becomes absolutely invaluable and everything else. But the ones who start at the moment don't get the full benefit of it. So it really works when, there's people like Mio, there's people like View My Chain, all of these ones have suffered from that same challenge, haven't they?
I do agree. I personally believe that code duty is slightly different in the tech they use and the way it can be done. But then even if you take that out of it, and this is where there can be different challenges, if you like, to it. So we're working with Advanced. So it was under the hammer to get I saw somebody in the comments said about searches being done up front. So we will create can create a legal pack. So there could be the TA forms there, the contracts will be there, the searches will be there. It's literally ready to exchange. Now, it's not necessarily a plug for them. I know I've been approached by a few different companies and they can all do that. So there is the ability to do that. So I think the estate agents, rather than pissing and moaning about conveyancing, we actually can do something about it. We can get everything ready. And you can only do what you can do, right? But actually, as agents, you can do quite a lot. It's not always somebody else's problem. The amount of upfront information you can do.
Let's just have a look at some of these comments here. So obviously you've got that one, still believe in requesting it searches on instruction. That's just about being sort of sale ready, isn't it, really? And having everything in place as you discussed. And there's so many solutions for that now. Megan saying, do we need to go back to having hit reports? If you basically, is that just an auction pack effectively, where all your searches and all the questions are all answered up front? Then anybody can walk into an estate agent's office, sort of pick that off the shelf and dive into it if they wanted to. You got Sophie. The whole legal system is one of the oldest institutions, and unfortunately, you can see that reflected in their process. It will be a slow slog to push them into the future. Do you know? Is it an attitude thing then?
Yeah. See that, and I've got a lot of time for Sophie. I know Sophie, but that is. Just because something's going to take a long time to do doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and things get done quick. And we do that. We have a lot of apathy in agency. It's funny when I speak at the conveyancing thing. I'm not there necessarily hounding conveyancers. I am on their side to a certain extent, because agents, we love to moan and we love to say this isn't good enough. But what are we actually doing about it? And I believe that just because you're not going to see the benefits of something tomorrow doesn't mean you shouldn't kind of try and push it on. There, as agents, we have a real chance to make a genuine change to an industry. And if you just want to be here for 5 minutes and earn a load of money, sell £1 million house, that's fine. Say that. But if you're going to kind of preach on about trying to do the right thing for the industry, then do the right thing for the industry, even if it doesn't benefit you today.
Yeah.
So we've got some comments here from Jim Parker that I'm going to put on screen in a second. But you've got to bear in mind that I suppose that Jim comes from a part of the world where solicitors' practices and estate agencies very often are one and the same, and they're combined, and they've been able to do the same job. And I think they all pull in the same direction in terms of wanting to get a deal through so they could get some money.
It's all missives concluded. See,
in the bank. But we've got some comments and some questions from Jim, and I think Jim's assertion, I think he's hinting at the fact that conveyancing might not be the most difficult of processes. Every other day someone claims to be the best at conveyancing. I would imagine it's a straightforward process of checking and rechecking detail to protect the client selling and buying. And he follows that up with, what is the most challenging part of conveyancing apart from the client's expectations? And I think that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, isn't it?
Yeah, but also I kind of thought that, but it was interesting. So when on National Conveyancing Week, when I was speaking on this panel, they were saying, because a couple of things agents forget is that the conveyancer isn't just acting for the buyer; they're also acting for the mortgage company, and that's got a lot of tie. And also, back again in the early days, I used to love the phrase "we'll take a view" or "let's chuck an indemnity insurance in it." Yeah. And again, I think we now live in this ambulance chasing society, don't we, where everyone wants to sue everybody. That I genuinely think conveyancers are actually scared to take views on what you would think is very sensible stuff, for the fear of getting sued.
Very true, that. Very
down
true.
The line, But if ultimately Scotland could do a lot quicker, can't they? And Scotland can do nothing better than the English usually. So we must, we must be able to do it. If the Scottish we must be able to do it as well.
Challenge. We'll be posting Matt's home address online for all your fans in Scotland
We
later.
keep the latent racism down for at least the second half of the show.
No, it's early on a Sunday morning.
I mean, there is a major basic point here. Let's take it back to principles as well of just where the money's at. And when there are so many agents that are demanding an ever higher slice of the fee from a referral point of view, and it means they're getting more than the conveyancer gets, something's clearly broken there, isn't it?
Yeah, something's clearly broken. But again, that goes back to holding fees. I don't believe we live in a world of too many ors. It has to be this or that. I don't necessarily believe you can't have a good service and get a referral fee. I think it has to be a sensible referral fee. I've worked in the past with very good conveyancers that don't pay fees. I've worked with very good conveyancers that will pay fees. I've taken hits on fees. We've worked with somebody, and it's never the firm for me. It's always the person. So we've worked for a firm. We've had referral fees come in. That person's left. We've gone to another firm. They pay less. Fine. You've got to do the job. The referral fee shouldn't be the be all and end all.
No. You know what? This might be unpopular, but I have turned down referral fees from solicitors on the basis that I'd rather choose a solicitor that I could just reach whenever I need to.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I think communication is the key to all of it. What makes our end of the job a lot easier is when they do play ball with you and they do update you. Solicitors, let's face it, can be that canary in the mine on a transaction, and they can say to you, look, the client's gone a bit cold, they're not responding, or they may be able to sort of give you information about something that's happening in the chain that you wouldn't be able to get from anywhere else. So I think it's worth its weight in gold.
David, we've been far too balanced and nice so far. Tell apocryphally this story, or anonymously, the email you got back from the conveyancer last year when you were in
I've got a clip of it. I've got a clip of it somewhere. But I called a conveyancer, and he picked up, and this must have been in the morning, mid-morning, and I was just calling for an update on the file. I was dead polite, and he picked up the phone and he said, we do not take any inquiries from estate agents until 4 o'clock, from 4 till 4:30. So obviously 4 till 4:30, their lines are jammed because everybody's trying to chase them, including the client. And the rest of the day, they don't play ball with anyone. That was one, I suppose, that is, I don't think that represents. I don't think that is representative.
But don't get me wrong. They 100% exist out there. I was in a conversation or a back and forth on LinkedIn a while ago, and it was all fairly decent. And then some tosser solicitor turned up and said, I won't give updates because it breaches client confidentiality. And you just think, but then again, I've just had a mortgage broker do the same. I've got someone buying through me using the police accredited mortgage company. They refused to give us updates. And then even the buyer said, look, no, you can speak to Matt. And they said, no, it's a breach of like GDPR or whatever we're calling it today.
But it's interesting, you know what? Look at the comments here. You can see the theme that runs between them all is that referral fees aren't the kind of be all and end all when it comes to sort of relationships with conveyancers. You can't refer for the sake of it. You refer to clients. Who you refer to reflects on you, and I think that's 100%. Also true as well. Jim Parker said, I've never worked on a referral from solicitors, always best want to do the job and at an affordable price. That's another thing as well. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the price of conveyancing has markedly crept up. They might not think it's enough yet, but it's certainly gone up over the course of the pandemic. It went up significantly, percentage point wise.
It's almost like we've suffered from inflation somehow.
Well, no, that was justifiable inflation at the time due to the fact that they were absolutely rammed in terms of volume. People were putting pressure on them to get things through for the stamp duty deadlines and so on, so they increased their prices accordingly.
Oh, David, you're so naive. Look, if I've learned anything from what people are telling us, it's down to Putin's invasion of the Ukraine.
Everything's more expensive. Here we go. I wonder when AI will be introduced to go through it all. If only it could be done within 30 days. They need to work to target dates more personally. And I wonder, actually, Matt, would that change our job entirely if we lived in and worked in an ecosystem where when you turn up in somebody's living room to pitch to them, you say to them, right, well, if you get on the market and when we find you a buyer, from the minute we find you a buyer to completion, the average is 30 days.
It becomes the Australian market, doesn't it?
It does, but more than that, it changes the way that we take on property instructions, because particularly in this market now, and you'll see this with a lot of competitors as well, there's crazy pricing going on in some parts of the world, and there's massive variations. You talk to vendors, they'll tell you that they've had, I spoke to one the other day, said they'd had a £200,000 variation on their valuation from like 4 or 5 different agents. And that's a massive range of error, if you like. But I think the point of this is there's a lot of people that speculatively put their house on the market, and the pricing of it is not priced to sell. It's priced to just see whether or not they'll get any bites.
Yeah.
Would that change if they knew they'd have to be moving within 30 days?
Yeah, of course, and also that takes us down a different conversation, because what you just said about conveyancers putting the fees up, what I've also noticed is no sale, no fee isn't as prevalent as it was. For years I was under the assumption every conveyancer was no sale, no fee, and now they've stopped doing it. And I think that's another thing I think agents need to look at is charging something for the work they do. You know, if agency didn't exist and I walked into the bank today and said, listen, I've got this great business idea, I'm going to do loads of work, spend a lot of money on marketing, and then best case I'll get paid in 6 months, but worst case the people go, no, actually I've changed my mind, thanks, I don't have any money.
You just described kerfuffle.
I'm getting chest pains from both sides of my chest, the estate agent bit and the kerfuffle bit. Stop it.
Yeah, you know, so I think, but I think there's something in that. I don't mind saying it. We personally, so at the start of the month, we put our fees up by 10% because I went to get some keys cut, and he said, and I go there every time, this place. And he said, by the way, it's all gone up, inflation 10%. And I just went, okay. I didn't argue or negotiate. And I thought, everybody's charging more, aren't we? And we call it a commitment fee, a very small charge a commitment fee to say, yeah, we definitely want to put a house on the market. It comes off the fee at the end, but it's a sign that person is serious about selling.
But it's non-refundable if they pull out and withdraw it without reaching the end of the transaction.
Yeah, without reaching the agreement, you see. And we haven't, interestingly, we've had a bit of pushback on the increase in fee, but we've had no pushback on that whatsoever. I actually think it's all in agents' head. The public understand we're doing work and they have to pay for it. But it's just having that in you to kind of ask for it. I got told in my office, you will never do it, we'll never do it. And I said, well, do me a favour and try. And worst case, I look a dickhead, and they went and did it. So I think
occasionally when you're discussing fees with a client and if part of your pitch, and it's been part of my pitch for years, that there's nothing to pay up front, because that was the differentiating factor between me and say some of the corporates that were charging, or people that were locking them into absolutely very, very strict long-term contracts. So we say, okay, we don't have that. I'm willing to live and die by our own service. You can disinstruct us anytime. Occasionally clients have looked at me like I'm crazy, and they go, well, what's the catch? Why would you do all of this for free? And I'm like, well, this is my job. This is my life. This is what happens in our side of the industry. And it's not entirely fair. And where we do differ, I think, substantially from the conveyancing sector is no sale, no fee. So I think conveyancers, to me at least anyway, had always walked away with their costs covered in an abortive transaction, whereas we'd be left holding the baby with nothing, if under the same circumstances.
But I agree. And just to go back to your point about the 30, it doesn't even have to be a 30-day window. So I did 2 valuations on Friday. One was a change so a flat he'd had rented out, tenants have left. He's about to drop onto the standard variable rate, and his mortgage is going to cripple him. So, and it's leasehold, so he needs it done. So I said to him, well, we can find you a buyer and we can wait 4 months for it to go through, or we can get sale ready, for want of a better term, and we'll probably have it done in 3 weeks. Perfect. The next one was a family home, and they were, funny enough, moving to Scotland, and they were saying it works a lot differently up there. We've got no chance up there unless we start. So again, I can say, well, look, we can get you on the market here, and we can get you can't move till August, but we can exchange sooner. So there are options out there to get these things just done quicker. It's just about agents. Not we've always done it that way. That's the biggest problem, isn't it?
Let me ask you, do you think, I mean, when I'm listening to these conversations and when I'm part of them, and when I look at how the Aussies operate, and where in a sort of estate agency ecosystem where auction is so much more visible and so much more front and center, mainstream, if you like, in terms of selling houses, it's amazing that we haven't got into that mentality here. It almost seems like we as agents have built up this stigma against auction houses over the years, because although we could be partnering up with them and using them, we've chosen never really to embrace it, because we've always seen it as a threat to the kind of traditional hard slog open market scenario that we normally, private treaty that we normally go down. Whereas actually it could be part of our services. And I think, I mean, I've always said this, because I love the idea of turning up in front of somebody's house and running an auction in the street. I think that appeals to my ego and showmanship. But seriously though, do we not think that is so much more conducive to getting us all to where we want to be? The solution's already there.
It's strange though, isn't it? Because like fine art is sold in auction, expensive watches are sold in auction, expensive cars be sold in auction, but houses, for some reason, auction means cheap. And it's it's a really dirty word for some reason. So it can be, but again, I think you could get the auction pack ready and not call it an auction. You don't have to, if you don't want to go down there, you can still have the normal sales process, viewings, people bidding. But once you want to buy, number one, the pack actually doesn't just speed things up at the end. You can hand it to somebody and say, this is what you're buying. So you're going to, your fall through rates are going to stop, because they're going to actually look and study what they're buying. And then number two, when they are ready to exchange, to commit to the purchase, finance aside, there's nothing else to do. So we don't necessarily need to go down the full auction route, I don't think. But I genuinely believe there isn't a reason to get legally ready at the moment.
But you do need to, honestly, that group, that upfront one I'm talking about is really trying to nail this down. It's important to point out as well, just to pay back my invite for Tuesday, there are companies out there like Simply Conveyancing that do no sale, no legal fee, so there are, you just have to look around. I think one of the things we found there is people are so intransigent to changing from one conveyancing operation, probably because they are getting a referral fee. So it's like, why rock the boat or anything else out there? But just in the way that it's dead easy to switch a bank account, but very few of us actually do that. That comes down to just, getting off your arse and actually doing something. The other thing is, David, and I know you've got this in your, you've got this certainly as your big campaign at the moment to try and get more people to see auctions, or auctions as they call them in Australia. But I say it again, I was with James McConnell, who was one of the owners of Marshall White, one of the biggest agents in Melbourne, who, along with the central Melbourne crew there, like people like Jealous Craig, literally created, the market. You've got over it. But as they said to me, you guys think that we've always done this. We've been practicing it for 100 years. We had to educate the public over 20 to 30 years to make this what it is. And it's still really important to point out, it is pretty much, it's de facto down the eastern seaboard, your Melbournes, your Canberras, your Sydneys and everywhere else. It's not, maybe over to Adelaide and some of the other ones. In between, there's still swathes as well that don't operate it. So if you think we're probably into the first decade, I suppose, of auctions becoming a thing over here, with the likes of the SDLs, Bamboo, Iron Property changing the market, their steady increase in the marketplace has now overtaken the online agents. And I think that's fascinating, because all the agents have given a toss about thinking, focusing all their attention on is.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me that, you've got people like EXP, you've got Keller Williams, and you've got a number of other different sort of self-employed models out there. Some have more merit than others, some are better than others, and you can read all the feedback online. What's amazing is, I would have expected somebody to actually start a network of almost auction agents who that is their only route to market, who are self-employed and just pushing it in. It just seems to be a space that just isn't fully kind of capitalized at the moment.
Well, we love to start a network, David. So I'll message my brother. We'll have that up and running by Monday.
Thanks for tuning in to the first session of the Auction Network.
There you go.
I think there's definite advantages there, and there's definitely value that can be delivered to the consumer. And I think all of this is going to help with our cash flow in general as an industry, because solicitors will get paid quicker, the agents get paid quicker, the client gets their money in the bank quicker. And I think that's probably one of the main changes that needs to happen. There is that sense that, when you walk into a client's house and you have to introduce yourself that first time, and go through what it's like to move. Many people haven't moved for over 20 years, but one thing they'll remember is it took ages. They'll always remember that their house sale took ages. Yeah. So if I say to them, look, on average, it will take 3 months to get through conveyancing. So if we find you a buyer today and they put an offer in, and if we all push like Billy O, within 12 weeks, you might be through. That seems like a long time to a lot of people. And I think that that education process needs to sort of start, that we can actually start to tell them that actually there's a better way to do this. There's a quicker way to do it. And you don't need to necessarily be stuck in legals for 3-4 months.
And it's not like agents have to go and do loads of work. At Kerfuffle, I guarantee you'll have at least 5 companies that are offering to do this upfront stuff straight away. It's not like the agents have to. Agents, we don't like to do the hard work. We just like to go and do the nice photos and the drone videos and stuff. So, but it's not difficult to do. And I think we've come so far on because reservation agreements, but there was never a perfect, because it was either the agent and the reservation company got paid, or the client got paid and the agent didn't, and there was always somebody going to be kind of left out. So actually, the only way for everyone to get what they want is for the transaction to actually go through, and the upfront information for me just seems I sometimes I think I must be making a mistake because it seems so obvious to do. I think, am I missing something?
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, I think Mugatu said, and when it's solved. It's interesting you guys there mentioned the HIP thing. There is a company out there, actually I'm just posting it up here as well as that own buying group, called, funny enough, Hitler, which I did mention to them when they were launching might have connotations for some people.
It's a great name, and it really makes me feel at ease. So
does it make you feel bad? But they are.
Well, first of all, Simon Whale turns up with his master race haircut this morning, looking like a poster boy for the Nazi youth. And
Goering. Actually, I got that's wrong. I was going to say Goering always wore pink. I chose the one Nazi that actually probably did wear pink, didn't I?
He did very regularly. So tell us about your mate Hitler. It's great.
I think we've done our comparisons no end of good this morning. Yeah, you don't get this on Watkins. So have we done that to death then? Have we done that to death, or have we fixed the problems there?
The problem with this is Jim Parker once again. I can't do his accent, but the problem with the conveyancing process is that it relies on people from several places to do their job on time. It needs critical path analysis to make it efficient, and that's part of the work that people like Coadjute are doing, isn't it? Really, to get everybody and that visibility, and that visibility and accountability actually puts everybody under a little bit of scrutiny that makes them work harder, because you don't want to be the person that hasn't responded to inquiries when everybody else in the chain has. You don't want to be that last solicitor to kind of to chuck them in. Whereas you could hide under that kind of at the moment there's a confusion and ambiguity as to whose fault it is. But if you're looking at the screen and you can actually see David has not submitted his searches yet, or David is still waiting for this, David has not done his response. It will put me under pressure to do it.
It's not exactly gamification, but the transparency that a lot of these platforms do means that if you have got speedier conveyances, you're absolutely right. You don't want the ones holding back, in the way that a certain online estate agent was always responsible for dragging it back and holding and really causing a problem in the chain, wasn't it? So there was definitely a lot of talk about that around the tables on Tuesday.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking a large amount of your week to solve the conveyancing crisis for our industry between you both.
It still
It's
didn't.
okay.
It still wasn't as long as watching Hamilton.
Yeah, and also it's only 10:15, so it's okay.
That's true. That is true. Well, if you don't mind, Matt, we're going to look at some other news. You can stay on if you like, because I know that you've
or you can win some kudos back with your family. You're doing what? You're doing what this morning?
Yeah, it's that really awkward bit now where I don't know if you want me to go or not.
No. I want you to stay.
Let's stay. Let's stay.
Jim thinks that there should be a league table for conveyancers.
Oh, if only there was a review site that was able to do that, David.
That would be good. That would be good. Right, Mr. Simon Whale has sent me, as he does every Sunday morning, he'll send me an email with some of his stories that he really has liked over the past week or has turned his head. And one of them was this mystery about Barclays restricting access to people's bank account, particularly in the property sector. Did you read that, Matt?
No, I didn't. So I'll listen to this part.
I tell you what, we should have got him off. I told him, I gave him an option to get off. Well, okay, so what happened was certain agents who bank with Barclays, and that's the bank that's been named in all the articles, woke up to find that their bank account, but their normal trading bank account, was frozen and pending a review. They just could not log into it. There's no explanation. And in some cases, they were waiting days to get back into it. They're saying that during that time, they weren't able to pay, well, anything pretty much. Staff, petrol, landlords, they couldn't pay.
Tory MPs.
Tory MPs need a bit of a consultation payment over some planning, Mr. Jenrick, allegedly. So I think this has obviously caused a lot of disruption. But what's interesting about that story is that it sort of hits off what we were talking last week, that there just seems to be within that banking sector at the moment a very poor relationship with a state agency in general, because we're not regulated in the way that they would like us to be. So they came in and they froze a lot of client accounts, but seemingly there's mass confusion at some of the banks and they're freezing actual accounts as well. And it is going to plunge a lot of agents into trouble.
Did you not see the comments though on that estate agency today story? I thought you would have noticed your old protege, mentor, Mr. Murray Lee. We have notifications on all our accounts on the web pages. We completed new KYC and updated some stuff with them. It took about 2 to 3 months to confirm all the new requirements, but luckily we passed. I'm hearing a similar things with other parts, Draconian. The reason I brought this story up, David, was purely really to prove you once for right, because you were literally talking about this last week, weren't you, about the Carmenly products, obviously, who have been saying when people are trying to, get their business account renewed, they're getting rejected and left with nowhere to go.
So what a surprise. Our two Property Mark fans this morning, Sophie and Megan, are pushing for regulation of estate agents so that the banks give us back our bank accounts. But luckily, we can fight them without the regulation, and we can actually get bank accounts from people like Colmany who do offer alternatives. And there are other people out there that do it. And it's just, I think it's just one more example of how sort of the mainstream banking world and political world don't really sort of see a state agency and the value that we bring to the table sometimes, because you would not just do this on a whim in any other industry, would you?
I also noticed that ticket sales for our dinner were down this month. So obviously a lot of agents' bank accounts being frozen hindered that as well. So, they just don't really understand the ramifications of what they're doing.
Can I ask you a question on the back of this comment over here? Roper is something that make the Property Mark crowd very, how should I say, excited. Yeah. They like the idea of Roper. They like the idea of being ahead of that and owning a massive piece of it. and they think it's very important. How important do you think it actually is, Matt? And will it actually will it help to weed out bad agents, or will we just will the ones that break the rules just break those new rules as well?
I feel like you're setting me up for my views on property market.
Independently of property, Mark.
Yeah, regulation. I think is important. However, I am personally bored to tears of everybody saying when Roper gets here it will all be okay, because it can all be okay now. So there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and the estate agency community with social media and the voices we have, we can be that village, and the children can be the new agents coming through. So when I was an agent, you were directly influenced by your area manager or your direct line manager and how they were acting. At the moment, you can have somebody, and we all like to villainize the corporate, so we can have a young chap in the corporate agent being told you must conditional sell mortgages, but he can go on LinkedIn, Facebook, and he can see really good agents talking about the way to do things properly. So we can self-regulate. Most of us, the police didn't have to turn up at your school and tell you not to steal things before you knew not to steal things. And that's the bit. So I'm all for regulation. We put all our team, we use the able agent, we're putting them all on training. I know probably Mark like to think they're going to be the ones that kind of get the tick off. But I think it's lazy to sit there and say, oh, everything's bad, but it'll be okay when we're saved by the government, when we can actually save ourselves just by doing the right thing and shouting about doing the right thing.
But do you think it'll change public opinion? Do you think that when we go in to see people in their homes, rather than us be seen as a means to an end that they may not trust, or that that all the times we say, oh, estate agency has come up in that list of least trusted professions and all that sort of stuff. Do you think regulation changes that?
Well, it can't do us any harm, I suppose. We can't go backwards, can we? I don't know how. I think some people are going to be really bothered about it. Some aren't. We've got a thing now with Graham Locke and the FIA have brought something out where they want everybody to have background checks. So you can have you can turn up and you say, "We're coming into your house, Mrs. Smith. Just I'm not a master criminal." And so some people, they'll be really happy about that. Some people, they're not worried because they've been having agents in their houses for years. So
I'm not a master criminal, but I'm learning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a trainee. So I think I'm not. I would love it if regulation came in. I would love it. You're always going to have bandits. You're always going to have people, because there is certain amounts of regulation, especially in lettings, for what letting agents can do, and you've still got bandits. But I think before the regulation comes in, agents need to stop. Agents need to get out of the theory and put it into the practice. It's all well and good saying one day things will change. We'll just change them today. You've all got Facebook. You've all got social LinkedIn. Just talk about doing the right thing. It's
about having those common values, isn't it?
I love the green light that Sophie gave us. Dodgy people will always be dodgy.
Right, Mr. Whale also brought up another article, which I'm going to try and flash on screen if I can. Who misses? One sec. Here we go. So this is Our Property Industry Eye, isn't it? New group to support LGBTQ plus estate agency community launches. And Simon, you linked this instantly to some of the progress that has been made with the Women in Estate Agency group and other groups like that. Question. It's obviously a massive push in the right direction in terms of formalizing discussions and being more open to different people and different ways of life within the industry. And I think we've made some massive progress over the last 2 or 3 years. Are we now on track to becoming the wokest industry? We went from being completely non-representative, but have we, we are really sort of shifting it back in the other direction.
I was going to let you answer for your industry there, Matt.
Oh, sorry, Simon. I thought it was asking you there. Yeah, no. Listen, how can that even be a bad thing? You know, to a certain extent, it's sad that we have to have groups for things. You know, the Women in the Stage Conference was a fantastic event, but to a certain extent, it's a shame that you have to have it in the first place. But I think so a state agency, if you think about it, and I know I do get a little bit on my high horse about this. We're just dealing with people's lives and people's life stories, and we're helping people. And so they want to know the backstory about us. So we're helping people from all walks of life. And so we should be very proud of the fact that we are people from all walks of life. Because with the personal branding, people do want to know who they're dealing with. And yeah, I don't see why we shouldn't be really proud of kind of who we are.
I think it was Matt, what was great about it is that group could never, or I believe would never have started up if it hadn't been for things like the Women in the State Agency group and everything else there. Yeah. So that it is a case of once you see what's possible elsewhere. I think it was started, those three that had first founded it were from EXP as well, which again, as you just said there, Matt, very much coming from an individualistic brand. And it would be I was going to name them there, but in Australia, there's some people that really live and breathe that who they are themselves, and it does move it very much away from that white, pale and stale sort of sometimes the image that the industry has. And just to point it out again, we did ask a number of women to appear on the show, but they'd all slept in this morning because they didn't change their clocks. You know, that's what women are like.
Talking about what women are like, there is a concerted effort to change the tone of the conversation, but particularly the language we use. So I don't know if any of you picked up on this morning, but Ellie Reese was the Dear Sirs campaign. So they have a campaign. So for years, the way of addressing formally a collective group of people would be Dear Sirs, right? And Ellie writes a fantastic article in the Sunday Times today that gives several examples of different bits of language that she wants to see changed within the industry. So for argument's sake, we've all heard that argument that you should not refer to the main bedroom of the house as the master bedroom, because obviously that's a throwback to a dark time. But she also wants to see things like, very often the fourth bedroom of a house would have been referred to as the nursery or suitable as a nursery. And there's a lot of people that struggle with fertility or choose not to have kids or whatever it may be that may find that offensive. And
you'd call it the dungeon, wouldn't you?
you can call it whatever you like, yeah.
Any proper estate agent knows that's called the box room.
Well, exactly. But I think there is this sort of that push, and I think it's being spearheaded, if I'm not mistaken, by Ellie and by Nicola Broomham at Deverell Smith, I think they're called. And it's just an interesting movement. I don't know how many people feel that the language we use is inappropriate or needs to be changed, but it's certainly, we are attempting to sort of take control of all those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
All over to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Sophie's got a woke problem. Here we go. Prefixes. That's my bugbear. So does Sophie want to be referred to as a bear? As a bug? A bug?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a bear.
Know what your prefix is, please.
We don't. I don't think I work in a posh enough town because we don't. With the Dear Sirs thing, I understand it, but it's not anything we come up against ever. We just don't really.
Some people just want to make.
That's what she was talking about. So it's when you ask somebody, "Are you a Mrs., a Ms.?"
Oh, that's much better. That's asking their martial status. I'm a ninja.
Yeah.
But actually, this is a really good point. It shouldn't matter to us what these people are called, what gender they are,
unless they're a doctor. If you say hello, Mr. Jones, and they go, it's Dr. Jones, actually, then there you go.
I certainly like my happy gas.
It was noted when we were helping her this week that the majority of tenancy agreements refer to the landlord as he. Yes, and the actual word landlord is not the same as landlady or owner or whatever it may be. So I think you're going to see much more of it, which actually is your point is right, Simon, that 3 or 4 years ago, you would never have seen that. This would have been laughed out of town, but now people are backing it and taking it seriously.
All I hope is, and I understand we've got to do it, but I hope we don't go all that way down, down the road where actually you lose the end goal and actually you're just trying to help the client out per se, aren't you? Because you're spending so much time trying to tread on eggshells, I suppose. There, it is important to remain focused, isn't it? But I can understand that sounds like every misogynist or ist of any kind that wants to defend how things should never change. So,
but also there are things that are really important to people and they should fight for them. But we do also, there are a select few people that will jump on any bandwagon and kind of just they like just being on that. So I feel if you're going to fight for something, you've got to fight for something you generally believe in and kind of careful, not because you think it's going to get you your name featured in Pie.
There hasn't been a bandwagon I couldn't get on.
There's a dinner you can't get to.
So I don't know about you, but when you open the sort of industry press every morning, we hitherto over the past sort of 4 or 5 weeks, it was full of M&A stuff. So two agents merging, people being bought out, long established independent acquired by who, this, that, and the other. And my complaint was, this isn't news. This is just a press release being put into every publication. Yeah. But now, I don't know if you've noticed this, we're seeing more people go under as well. So you're seeing long established firms disappear. Some of them being, I think the phrase is phoenixed. But there's more of that going on, which has always troubled me a little bit because, well, we've had probably 2 or 3 of the best billing years estate agents were ever going to see. And yet, how come they reach the end of that roller coaster ride and there's no money in the till? It's just an odd space, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, I had lunch with James Evans this week of Douglas and Gordon, and it was a bit. I saw him the day after, obviously, all the news broke in there. So there's a big elephant in the room which he dealt with straight away, and I've got to just stay straight up and foremost. First of all, there was a lot of inaccuracies in the story, and secondly, I know the fellow, and it would be going too much to say he's a close friend or anything else, but he's not the person who was portrayed in those articles at all. But he was talking about how it had happened, obviously, from it being over a year. And this is where you just have to accept, to argue against my point going on before, joking about inflation and Putin and everything else, is you try getting investment when Quasi's blowing up the economy. You can have all sorts of different things lined up, can't you? And then these black swan events that by definition are meant to happen irregularly, you get 3 or 4 of them in the same year. It's like, how many bounces can you, how many punches can you take really with when you're trying to build something afresh? It's quite difficult.
It's true. There have been more than our fair share of sort of punches and events that have disrupted the property market pretty much instantly. And I think also the other thing that we're finding and people are not talking about enough is the fact that you have got probably one of the worst environments at the moment for landlord investors and so on. You're seeing a lot of those disappear out of the market. And so you've got massive areas of long-term income perhaps under threat.
I think I was talking to some of the people who went to MIPIM the other day because it's one of the ones I haven't done. And if I'm honest, I very rarely get imposter syndrome because I know exactly what I am. And what it isn't is the old brown patch jacket brigade over there. But they said, obviously, MIPIM is about promotion, obviously, of all the town, cities, everything else. And they said when they went to the main hall, they said they saw the London stand or whatever else. and it just looked a bit depressed. It just looked a bit sort of like, and they made the point that, look, we are incredibly resilient. Estate agency is always incredibly resilient and everything else there. But this has been now death by 1,000 paper cuts, hasn't it? Whatever it is, 13 years of whether those are external events or bad decisions we've made internally. And finally, it just feels like it's all coming onto our shoulders. Because then what they went on to say was the Paris stand next door was absolutely going crazy.
On fire.
Sandwich, no, yes, yeah. Well, you know them. That's just a night out for them. They're passionate. And then also as well the Saudi one, of course, which isn't without its challenges. And they were saying all of the consultants were just making a beeline for those ones. So we know we've got a lot of work to really to get ourselves back to where we need to be, haven't we?
I think the lettings one's going to be an interesting landscape because a lot of people focus on landlords selling and exiting the market. But I think what a lot of people haven't clicked or aren't talking about yet is the lack of spin. So agents make a lot of money from relets, from tenants leaving from one property to another. Yeah. I think what you're going to find is the way rents have shot up so much, tenants aren't going to be leaving as much. And also because of the cost of living, they're like, well, we'd like to move, but we know what our bills are here, so we'll see it out for another year.
So, Matt, you're saying that's going to go the way of sales then, where famously, people used to sell every 7 or 8 years, and that's drifting back and back as well. You see lettings going the same way in terms of that stickiness almost.
Yeah, I think because, there are obviously less new properties coming to the lettings market, so agents relied on those relets. And I think they're going to find that they're not kind of coming as often as they were.
We've kept Matt Baldock now for almost over an hour, but I just want to touch on two other things. That I listen to other property podcasts sometimes. Yeah, I know. I just like to see what they're talking about. But Katie on the House of Property podcast was talking about an AML provider that does a dashboard, and you can find them on Kerfuffle. But basically, they allow you to check who owns the property, so it will do obviously a check on the title plan. But more importantly, and I found this very interesting, it could tell you precisely who the lender is, when that charge was registered, and it will predict when that mortgage is about to run out, so that you can actually. So I think this is quite an interesting, almost has a prospecting angle on it as well, because people are more vulnerable at the time, or more likely to consider massive changes property-wise at a time when they are coming to the end of a fixed deal, particularly in this financial climate now. But that led me on to another thing, which I just did not know, and they didn't mention it on this podcast. I read it in some article, I think on the BBC, but I assumed that we were going to see a load of people coming off fixed rate mortgages being told that their new deal was this instead of that, and being forced into situations where they could not afford to pay it. They would have to sell, or they would end up being repossessed, and we'd have a crisis on that. But in actual fact, what I've and the other thing that worried me was a lot of people have had changes in jobs over the pandemic. So there's a lot of people who took out mortgages pre-pandemic that are simply not in the same employment as they were. I mean, I'm not. And whether or not a bank would take, me seriously. What do you do for a living? Here's a picture of Simon Whale. I'm not quite sure I'd pass the affordability criteria again.
I've got news on that employment as well, David.
So the news that I read, and this is interesting, people coming off a fixed rate, there is no affordability criteria for them with their current lender. Their current lender has to offer them a new deal at a new rate. So you will never be turned down. I as long as you're up to date with your payments, that's the way it is. I never knew that, and I don't think a lot of people do.
I don't know that.
No, I suppose the only thing is, what will that rate be?
Yeah, that rate inevitably is going to be much higher than whatever it was that you were paying.
But it would be also higher than what you could get if you could go to the whole market.
That's interesting.
If they feel they've got you a little bit over a barrel.
It did, here we go. Paul Monday has commented that vendors won't like you knowing their mortgage detail. It's too creepy. There is a sense that as we get more wise with all this data stuff, and we have a lot of different systems taking data from official government websites and so on. And it's all publicly available data. But when you collate it all together in one place, there is that sense of little bit of stalker-like creepiness to it. And we've got other tricks in our bag as well, haven't we? Where we've now got systems that notify us when people have opened emails or read our proposals. How creepy is that, and how off-putting would that be to vendors?
I think it's just a case of, though, you know, we're all trained. You don't phone somebody and say, "Oh, I see you've just opened that document."
Yeah.
You know, it's meant to be, oh, coincidentally, and I think it would be like that. You know, you could use one of the many letters systems out there, speculative. You know, we think you've been in your house for 5 years. You might be coming up. You might be thinking about moving. So you could do it without drilling down into the detail and make yourself sound like a complete stalker.
Well, thank you very much. That is all we've got time for. Our resident expert on stalking, Matt Baldock. Thank you.
Thanks.
What Matt hasn't told you all, he was particularly well placed to talk about conveyancing because, Matt, what did you do in a previous life?
I worked in Shoe Express. Is that what?
No, I thought you were going to be a lawyer, weren't you?
Well, no, yeah, I do. I went to law school and did the full 3 years, but I left my final exam early to go to a barbecue.
He's the chosen one to bring balance to the force.
It didn't quite work out, but yes, no, I do have that. Yeah, my brother hates it when I bring it up, but I do have a certificate on the wall, and I got a picture with a hat on and stuff like that. So.
Oh, look, Trevor Ewins has just popped in before the break. I don't know whether he's sending a Tinder profile or a legal update. Legal update.
He's suing me.
Yeah. Something to do with legal. I can't click on that, but I think we're going to have to leave that for another week. So I just want to wish you all a merry week in property. Hope it's
merry week.
Simon, we're upbeat here. I know you like you wish each other Merry Christmas once a year. I'm wishing you a merry week. You know, live a bit.
Thank you, Matt, for joining us.
No, thank you, and thanks for letting me awkwardly stay on for the other bits. So yeah,
we love awkward. We love awkward. Thank you, everyone, for your comments as well. It's always great to see what you have to say. Cheers, guys.
See you soon.